Hello, I'm Bob Smeerfak, but not really. This series is designed for theological seminary students with approaching exams who have not had time to read the Bible, and for ritualistic poison drinkers looking for a brand of strychnine with more flavor and less calories. Matthew chapter 17. Let's go. 6 days later, Jesus grabbed some top members of his crew, that'd be Peter, James, and his younger sibling John, and took them on a little alpine safari, with a twist. At the summit, Jesus underwent a transfiguration, right there in front of everybody. What does that mean? Well, for one thing, his face attained a luminosity equal to our sun, about 100,000 foot candles per square foot, or 93 lumens per watt of radiant flux. That's an apparent magnitude of minus 26.74, with an absolute magnitude of 4.83. Unless you want to express it in watts, then 1370 per square meter. No doubt your mother would tell you not to look directly at him. But if you did, you'd notice his clothes were so spotless they looked like they came straight from the dry cleaners. But that's not all. Moses and Elijah had somehow made the trip in from the grave, and they were standing right there talking to Jesus, though the conversation itself was hush-hush. Always the first to be impressed, Peter interrupted the proceedings to reassert his top fanboy status. He said he was glad they got to see this and suggested they erect 3 houses of worship right there, one for each of the big shots in attendance. But God either didn't care what Rocky had to say, or he already knew what he was going to say and wanted to cut to the chase, because Peter didn't get a chance to finish. A luminous cloud formation, which was either piloted by God or concealed a speaker system set up to project his voice, zeroed in on them and blared out another verse of "Let's hear it for the boy," just like in chapter 3. This was too much for the Jesus boys, though. They all face-planted until the J-Man came around and tapped them on the shoulder and told them to get up and get a hold of themselves. When they did, the show was over. Everything was gone, including the 2 talking dead guys and God's subwoofer system. Now, on the hike back down, Jesus got one thing straight with the boys. Don't tell anyone about this until I get resuscitated. But the 3 star disciples had burning questions. For one, the scribes are always going on about how Elijah has to come back before anything can happen. So what gives? So Jesus told them, oh yes, Elijah is going to get reincarnated and make everything fresh again. And not only that, he already did. And people were like, nah, and did whatever they felt like with him. Jesus was obviously talking about that one asshole in chapter 14 who cut that guy's head off and let his niece serve it on a tray to his wife like an after-dinner mint. But anyway, Jesus said he was pretty much going to get the same treatment. At which point, Peter, James, and John all had a light bulb switch on over their heads. Oh, he is talking about Juan de Bautista. Anyway, back down in the valley, a lot of people were hanging around. One dude got on the ground in front of Jesus and told him his son was crazy and it was really affecting his son's lifestyle. He couldn't even stand up straight when he was around fire or water, and so he got burned and drowned a lot. Then the guy lowered the boom. Jesus' troops here in the valley had tried to cure the kid, but they blew it. That pissed the J-Man off, that his own guys couldn't do a basic healing. He called them names and told them they wouldn't have him around forever to show them how to do things, and he asked how long he was going to have to put up with this. Then he said, bring me the kid. And he did the magic, and that was that. He made it look so easy his boys asked him, why couldn't we do that? Jesus told them it was basically because they were the little engine that couldn't. Belief was the active ingredient here. He said the way things really were, faith equivalent to a mustard seed was all you needed to do a purely voice-activated removal of an entire mountain. With faith, there are no limits. Which meant that, since no one could manage that kind of excavation, no one had faith the size of a mustard seed. Most people apparently had faith the size of a quark. Except Uri Geller, who could bend spoons with his mind. He had faith the size of at least a proton. But evidently, this particular devil casting was not a proton-sized task, because Jesus added a caveat. To cast this devil out, you had to ask God directly, and go without breakfast. Since Jesus didn't do either of these things right before he tossed the boy's devil out on its ass, one had to assume he'd done so much prayer and fasting in the past that he'd built up a reserve. Jesus and the boys hung out a while in Galilee. Now, whenever there was time to kill, Jesus seemed to enjoy going all dark side. He told them again the story of how he was going to get disrespected, murdered, and then revived 3 days later. If he was trying to put the boys in a deep funk, it worked. Eventually, they made it to Capernaum. But when they pulled into town, some dudes who collected tribute money for the king checked in with Peter and asked him if his boss was going to pony up any dough. Peter said, oh yeah. But Jesus grabbed him and said, what are you thinking? Do kings charge a tribute to the residents or to foreigners? Peter said, foreigners. So Jesus said, we're in the clear. But then he said, let's not piss anyone off. And he told Peter to go fishing and pry open the mouth of the first fish he caught, and he'd find some money in there, and that'd cover the both of them. Peter would probably like to have known this mouth prying trick back when he was fishing for a living, but if he had any thoughts on the matter, he kept his own mouth shut. Next in this series, we'll move on to chapter 18. Spoiler alert, Jesus makes it uber clear that mistreatment of children is a non-starter. Whew, good thing he did that. As always, I'm not a religious figure, but if you want me to save you or damn you to hell, I'll do my best.
Bob Smeerfak? What a dumbass, ignorant, fast-talking, always-lying, pea-brained, pencil-dicked, unbelievably untalented, fat-headed, narrow-minded, crap-ass, video-making, undeniably certifiable, frickin' crazy, numb-nutted waste of YouTube space and toilet paper. But not really.